The coffee was still hot when my brother-in-law called. I remember that detail because I had just poured it the good stuff, the dark roast Eleanor used to order from that small place in Vermont, and I was standing at the kitchen counter in our house in Bend, Oregon, looking out at the Cascades the way she used to say I looked at everything, too carefully, too quietly, like I was cataloging it for later. She was right about that. 41 years as a structural engineer will do that to a man. You stop seeing things as they are and start seeing how they hold together, or how they fall apart. It was a Tuesday. We had buried Eleanor 3 days earlier. Her brother Gary called at 8:14 in the morning. I know because I looked at the clock on the microwave when the phone rang, the way you do when you're not sure you want to answer. I answered. "Frank," he said, "not hello, just my name, flat and deliberate, the way someone says a name when they've been rehearsing what comes after it." "Gary," I said. There was a pause. Then he said, "I've been talking to Eleanor's kids. Now, I want you to understand something about that phrase, Eleanor's kids." Ryan and Cassandra were 42 and 38 years old, respectively. Ryan was a project manager in Phoenix. Cassandra lived 20 minutes from us in Bend and had been to our house for dinner maybe 4 times in 3 years. Eleanor's first marriage had ended when they were teenagers. I had been in Eleanor's life for 19 years, married to her for 14. I was not their father. I had never tried to be, but I had never, not once, done anything to come between them and their mother. That was the arrangement, unspoken and understood. I stayed out of that lane. "Okay," I said. "They wanted me to be the one to tell you," Gary said, "because they weren't sure how you'd take it." I set my coffee down, not because I was upset, because I didn't want to spill it. "Eleanor changed the will," he said, "about 2 weeks before she passed. The house goes to you. We understand that. That's the law. But the investment accounts, the life insurance proceeds, the cabin up in Sisters, she redirected all of it. Ryan and Cassie expected to split those assets. That was the original arrangement, but Eleanor moved everything into a spousal trust. It all goes to you, Frank. They get nothing until you're gone." He let that sit there for a moment. "I just thought you should know," he said, "because the kids are pretty upset, and they're asking whether you had anything to do with it." I looked out at the mountains. There was snow on the upper elevations. Eleanor had loved that first snow. Every year she would stand at this same window and say the same thing. "The mountains are putting their coats on, Frank." Every year I told her that was a strange thing to say. Every year she laughed at me for saying so. "Gary," I said, "I appreciate you calling. Did you know about this?" he asked. "Direct now." The rehearsed part was over. "Yes," I said. Silence. "I knew about it," I said, "because Eleanor and I made that decision together. She asked me to help her do it, and I did." Gary didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "Frank, the kids are going to want an explanation." "I know," I said. "I'll be ready to give them one." I hung up the phone. I finished my coffee. I looked at the mountains. And I thought about the afternoon, 14 months earlier, when Eleanor sat across from me at the dining room table with a yellow legal pad and a pen she had borrowed from my desk, and said, "Frank, I need to tell you what I'm afraid of. Let me back up." Because the story that Gary thought he was telling, the story Ryan and Cassandra thought they were living in, was not the actual story. It was the surface of the story. The part you can see from the outside when you don't know what went into the foundation. Eleanor was 67 when she was diagnosed. Pancreatic cancer, which if you know anything about it, you know what that means. The doctor used words like aggressive and staging and "we're going to do everything we can," and Eleanor sat in that office with her hands folded in her lap and listened to all of it with the composure of someone who had already, somewhere, in the preceding weeks, begun to prepare herself. She told me later she had suspected for 2 months. She had not told me because she didn't want me to worry until there was something confirmed to worry about. That was Eleanor. Precise in her protections, careful about what she let land on other people. We drove home from that appointment in the middle of October. The leaves were down. She looked out the passenger window most of the way, and I let her look. When we pulled into the driveway, she turned to me and said, "Okay, so we need to make a plan. Not, we need to cry. Not, I can't believe this is happening. A plan." I told you she was right about me cataloging things. She had been doing it her whole life. I think that's why we worked so well together. The plan took shape over the following months. Some of it was medical, the oncologist, the second opinion, the decision about treatment and what she was and was not willing to put her body through. Some of it was practical. And some of it, the part that matters most to this story, was financial and legal. Eleanor had money, not family money. She had built it herself, over a career in hospital administration that spanned 30 years. The investment accounts Gary mentioned on the phone were hers, the cabin and sisters she had bought before we met, the life insurance policy she had taken out in her 40s and maintained ever since. These were her assets. She was proud of them in the way people are proud of things they built with their own effort over a long stretch of time. She was also a mother. She had always intended to leave something to Ryan and Cassandra. That had been the original plan, the one they knew about, the one Gary had called to remind me of, split evenly between them, to be distributed upon her death. But there is always a but, friends. And the but in this story is the reason Eleanor sat down with that legal pad and said, "I need to tell you what I'm afraid of." What she was afraid of was this, that she would die, and within a year I would be financially vulnerable, and no one would do anything about it except feel sorry for me. See, the house was in both our names. That was fine, but our monthly income had always been a combination of my pension, Eleanor's salary while she was working, and the dividends from those investment accounts. When Eleanor stopped working, which happened about 4 months after the diagnosis, because the treatment took everything she had, we were already drawing on the accounts to supplement. Without Eleanor's earned income, without those assets continuing to generate returns that I could access, I would be left with my pension alone, which sounds like it should be enough. And maybe it would have been, barely, if we hadn't also had the mortgage on this house which Eleanor and I had refinanced 5 years ago to pull equity for a renovation, and the property taxes, and the cost of keeping up a second property and sisters. She had run the numbers. Of course she had. She had managed budgets in the tens of millions for most of her career. If the accounts go to Ryan and Cassandra when I die, she told me, setting the legal pad down flat between us, you will be in trouble within 18 months. Not catastrophic trouble, but real trouble. The kind where you have to sell the cabin at a loss or take a reverse mortgage on this house or move somewhere smaller. And Frank, she looked at me directly the way she did when she was saying something she needed me to actually hear. I will not do that to you. I am not going to spend whatever time I have left worrying about whether you'll have to sell our house. I told her we could figure something else out. I told her Ryan and Cassandra would understand. She looked at me with great patience and love and said, Frank, honey, you know Ryan and Cassie. Do you actually believe that? And I was quiet, because I did know Ryan and Cassie. And the honest answer was, no. Ryan was not a bad person. He was a 42-year-old man who had grown up with the understanding stated explicitly by his father during the divorce, reinforced by years of holiday conversations that Eleanor's assets would eventually come to him and his sister. He had built his life around a certain set of assumptions. One of those assumptions was a number that lived quietly in the back of his financial planning the way numbers like that do. He was not malicious, but he was counting on it. And when people are counting on something, the discovery that it isn't coming changes them in ways they don't always see clearly until it's too late. Cassandra was different. Cassandra had real grievances, some legitimate, some imagined about Eleanor's second marriage and what she felt it had cost her in terms of her mother's time and attention. She had never fully welcomed me. I didn't hold that against her. Blended families are hard, and she had been a teenager when it happened. But there was a brittleness to Cassandra that Eleanor knew better than anyone. And Eleanor was quietly certain that if Cassandra inherited a significant sum of money, while simultaneously watching me continue to live in the house they had grown up in, it would become the vehicle for every stored resentment she had ever held. Not because Cassandra was cruel, because grief does that to people's edges. Eleanor had thought it all through. 14 months before she died, she had thought all of it through, and she had a plan. The plan was the spousal trust. We went to see an estate attorney named Patricia Wu, who had an office downtown, and came highly recommended by a colleague of mine from my engineering firm who had been through something similar. Eleanor and I sat across from Patricia on a Wednesday afternoon in late November, and Eleanor explained what she wanted and why she wanted it with the same calm precision she brought to everything. The structure was simple. The investment accounts, the life insurance proceeds, and the sisters' cabin would all be directed into a spousal trust upon Eleanor's death. I would be the sole trustee and the sole beneficiary for the duration of my life. I would have full access to the income generated by the trust. I could also draw on the principal in cases of genuine need, medical expenses, major repairs, things of that nature, with the standard and accountable to myself as trustee. Upon my death, whatever remained in the trust would be distributed equally between Ryan and Cassandra. They were not cut out. They were not punished. They were simply repositioned from first in line to second in line, which, as Patricia pointed out gently but clearly, is exactly where adult children belong when a surviving spouse is still living. Eleanor looked at me after Patricia said that, and I could see her exhale slightly, the way she did when someone put into professional language what she had been thinking privately for weeks. We signed the documents. We updated the beneficiary designations on the accounts. We informed the insurance company. Patricia gave us copies of everything in a manila folder that I kept in the fireproof safe in my home office, behind the hanging files, where it remained until 3 days after Eleanor's funeral, when I took it out and set it on the kitchen table and waited. I had known Gary would call. I had expected it might be sooner. Ryan called 2 days after Gary did. He was more composed than I expected. Ryan is an engineer of people the way I am, an engineer of structures. He manages things carefully. He doesn't show his load-bearing anxiety until it starts to crack. He said he'd spoken to an attorney. He said he wanted to understand the trust document. I told him I would send him a copy. He said he appreciated that. Then he said, "Dad, and I want you to notice that word, because it was the first time in 19 years that Ryan had ever called me that. And he used it, not as affection, but as leverage. Consciously or not, don't you think Mom would have wanted us to be taken care of?" "Yes," I said. "She did, and she made sure of it. You and Cassandra are the remainder beneficiaries. When I'm gone, what's in that trust is yours, split evenly. Your mother made sure of that specifically. But we could be waiting 20 years, he said. "Ryan," I said as gently as I knew how. "I am 63 years old. I am in good health. I intend to stay that way. But yes, you may be waiting a while. I'm sorry about that." A pause. "She didn't even tell us she was changing it," he said. "And this was the real thing, finally. Not the money, the exclusion, the secret." "I know," I said. "I think she was protecting you from having to process it while you were also watching her get sick. That's who your mother was. She didn't want you carrying something extra." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Did you push her to do this?" I had been ready for this question since the moment I picked up Gary's call. "Ryan," I said, "I want to be honest with you, because your mother valued honesty above everything, and I'm going to honor that. I did not push her. She came to me. She had already run the numbers and made up her mind. What I did was tell her that whatever she decided, I would support it. And then I went to the attorney with her because she didn't want to do it alone." Another long pause. "She never told me she was worried about the money," he said. "She never said you'd be in trouble. She didn't want to worry you," I said. "She was too busy not worrying you about the cancer." I heard him breathe out slowly, something shifting. "I need some time," he said. "Take all the time you need," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." Cassandra called that evening. Cassandra did not come in composed. Cassandra came in the way a person comes in when they have been saving something up for a long time, and the current situation has just handed them permission to release it. She was not angry about the money exactly. She was angry about everything: the marriage, the years, the way she felt Eleanor had organized her priorities, and the money was the door she had chosen to walk through. I let her go for a while. I have lived long enough to know that sometimes people need to say the thing before they can hear anything else. When she paused, I said, "Cassie, I know you're hurting." "Don't call me Cassie," she said. "I'm sorry," I said. "Cassandra, I know you're hurting. And I know some of what you're feeling right now isn't just about the will. I understand that. I've understood it for a long time." Silence. "Your mother loved you," I said. "That is a factual statement, not a comfort. She loved you in the specific, detailed way that she loved things. She kept every card you ever gave her in the second drawer of her nightstand. I found them when I was going through her things. There were cards in there from when you were 8 years old." I could hear Cassandra breathing on the other end of the line. "She didn't change the will because she loved you less," I said. "She changed it because she was afraid I would be in trouble, and she couldn't stand the thought of that. If there's anyone to be frustrated with, it's me. Be frustrated with me. I can take it." Cassandra was quiet for so long I thought she might have set the phone down. Then she said very quietly, "She kept the cards?" "All of them," I said. "I'll bring them to you whenever you're ready." That was 7 months ago. The cabin in Sisters is still mine. The investment accounts are intact. My pension covers the mortgage with a little left over, and the trust income covers the rest. I am not comfortable in the way Eleanor and I were comfortable together, but I am stable. I am secure in my house on the street where Eleanor and I planted 3 oak trees in the backyard, the spring after we got married, trees that are now tall enough to throw shade across the whole lawn in the afternoon. Ryan has been to dinner twice. He is working through it, the way methodical people work through things slowly, structurally, looking for where the pieces fit. I think he'll get there. I think he already knows that his mother was right, even if he's not ready to say so yet. Cassandra and I met for coffee last month. She brought her daughter Eleanor's granddaughter, who is 7 and who has Eleanor's eyes, and Eleanor's particular way of tilting her head when she's listening to something. We sat in a coffee shop and Cassandra showed me a photograph on her phone of Eleanor holding that little girl the Christmas before last, and she said, "She was really happy in this picture." "She was happy most of the time," I said. "She just didn't make a lot of noise about it." Cassandra looked at the photograph for another moment. Then she put her phone away and picked up her coffee cup. "I don't completely understand why she did it the way she did it," she said. "But I believe she had a reason. I don't completely understand." "She did," I said. "She always did." I want to say something to you, those of you who have been through something like this, or who are maybe sitting with a situation that looks like it's heading in this direction. Those of you who are widowed, or who are the surviving spouse watching your stepchildren circle something they believe is theirs. What Eleanor did was not unusual in the eyes of the law. In most states, assets passed through a spousal trust are completely within the surviving spouse's rights. Adult children, no matter how old they are, no matter what they were told or what they expected, do not have a legal claim to a parent's estate while the other parent is still living. That is not cruelty. That is how families are supposed to protect each other across time. What Eleanor did that was unusual was the planning. She did not wait until the last minute. She did not do it in secret. She did it with me, at a table, with a legal pad and a woman named Patricia Wu and a manila folder that is still in my fireproof safe. She did it with intention and love, and the same careful precision she brought to everything in her life. Gary has not called again. He came to the burial, stood at a respectful distance, and I think he understands now that the call he made the morning after the funeral was built on an assumption that turned out to be wrong. I don't hold it against him. He was trying to protect the people he loves. That's what Eleanor was doing too. The snow came back to the mountains this week. First snow of the season. I was standing at the kitchen counter, same spot, same window, and I thought, the mountains are putting their coats on. And then I stood there for a while, not cataloging anything, just looking. That's the whole story. Not a story about money. Not really a story about inheritance at all. It's a story about a woman who knew exactly what she was doing, and a man who trusted her, and what it looks like when two people build something together that holds up after the building is done.